programming. Back in my applied computing master's degree, I learned C++, and I learned Perl, and I learned some assembly, and I learned all of those things at a basic level, but then didn't end up applying them really in practice. And so they're all rusty skills that I have a basis in, but not something that I'm highly skilled in. So again, I'm more behavioral, more managerial focused, and my research ends that way, where I'm interested in how systems impact people rather than the design of the system. So, for example, Bill Kuchler, is an engineer by trade, and so his background is in engineering, and so he does design. There's something called design research in information systems, and it's about how do you actually design systems, and then how do you evaluate that design to show that it's better than what already exists out there. So that's more on the technical side, and that's his type of research and the things he's interested in. So questions as I'm throwing all this stuff out there. And so anyway, I finished at Georgia State, and I applied here, and I ended up getting in. That would have been fall of 2011 was when I started here. So this is my third year. We started my third year at UNR, my first job out of college. My first job out of as a PhD. So I ended up with 19 and a half years of education. Another cost associated with that is the actual cost. So I have a boatload of student loans that I'm paying off. So even though I'm making a fairly good salary as a professor, a good chunk of that is going to pay off for student loans for the next
5, 6, 10 years.
12 years, actually. Yeah. So that's another thing is education costs. I guess if I had to go back and do it over again, I might have adjusted how I did things, but it worked out the way it did. I like what I'm doing now. So part of it is finding out what you like, and so for example, working with my father-in-law, I could have stayed with that company. They liked me, and I could have kept doing that, but I really didn't enjoy that. So it's important to find something that you actually like and that you actually enjoy. In IS, there's a lot of different possibilities. In 495, we'll talk about being a business analyst and what it means to do systems analysis. And that's a very managerial focused side of business, but you also have the more technical, and there's lots of opportunities. So whether you want to be a network administrator, a database administrator, or a business analyst, or something in between, it's really just a function of trying something. If you've got a chance for an internship where you can actually try some of those skills, another good thing, something I never did do again as an undergraduate that I probably should have done. Give you an idea of what the job is actually like, and go into a business and get a chance to try it before you actually get out and finish your degree. So, questions?
Speaking of internships, can you let the club know about where they could go, who they could talk to in regard to IS internships?
Yeah, Dana Edberg is probably the best person to talk to. She tends to accumulate the internships, and she is responsible for typically setting them up. The internships go out to everybody, so we're all aware of what's available, but she generally handles those. So you would go through her and sign up for the internships. And so she's the best point of contact. You can ask any faculty member about what kinds of internships there are out there. So IGT, for one, is one of our biggest internship providers, but there's also Sierra Nevada Corporation, and Microsoft Licensing is another big one. And then there are other smaller ones. So more recently, there was one with the state agency down in Carson City that they wanted to create a database and manage some data there. It was a short project for one person, I think. And so there's those kinds of one-off internships. Every year, IGT and SNC and Microsoft Licensing have internships that you can apply for. So those are regular ongoing ones, and there are smaller ones as well.
Washington County School District is a couple.
Okay, good. That I hadn't heard about. What are those for?
Maybe just basic IT stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, which was the Microsoft one? I heard that one leaned more towards like marketing and finance, but not so much IS.
So actually, Microsoft Licensing does, they have internships from all parts of the business school, so that's a good point. But they do have IS people, and so so there are specific internships for IS working with their systems. One, I think of what one, for example, one guy who was working there as an IS major a year ago was looking at developing a system. Basically, with Microsoft licensing, what they're responsible for is those big licensing agreements with Dell and other large providers, where they're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of licenses, and how they manage those license distributions, and how Dell comes in and said, we need a new set of licenses for these new systems, and how they go about managing that relationship. And so what he was doing was managing the interconnection, creating the system, or creating the link between their system and these. It wasn't Dell, it was some other smaller organization, but another one of these vendors, and to create the link so that verification of those licenses was happening appropriately. And if there were issues with that process, that his department was handling that, trying to figure out how to go in and make changes to the system to handle those errors or issues associated with that relationship in that system. So there are certainly technical positions, certainly IS positions, but Microsoft, when you think about Microsoft, you would kind of think, okay, it's all IS, but they have finance and marketing and management internships as well. So they actually have a club. I don't know if you know that, but there is a Microsoft club that was developed because there are quite a few interns from across the college. And so that Microsoft club then is open. Initially, it was just all of the majors who had it, or all of the students from all the different majors that were interns, and now it's open to everybody as well. And so it's another club that's available on campus. They were doing some stuff, like last year, one of the things that they did was they had, what was it, Halo 3 or 4, whichever one was the new one. They had a game day where you could come out at the student union, and they had TVs set up, and they would play against each other, and the winner got an Xbox. I think the winning team got an Xbox. And so they did stuff like that. I haven't heard anything they're doing this year, but they are an entity. They have a club. So, good question. So yeah, internship opportunities, definitely look at those. Questions about classes?
Renown had some as well.
Yes, Renown is another one that offers some.
So there's like a business intern, but you gotta be SQL, pretty decent at SQL and things like that.
Yeah. So in fact, just the other day I had this, we interviewed Chuck Scully, who's the CIO of Renown, and he asked us if there was a way that they could meet with students and identify good candidates, because they actually have quite a few positions. They have something like 27 positions, not internships, but actual jobs that they're looking at trying to fill in the next year, because there's such a need for, and all of this is configuration. So these positions are configuring Epic. And so they would teach you about Epic. You would go to school and do training for Epic. One of your class, Kushal Amin, is starting there. In one of those
called the
positions.
application specialist position.
Yeah, but basically what it is it's a system configurator. In other words, you're not doing traditional programming. What you're doing is Epic is built on a programming language, and I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It's some odd one that you would never learn normally.
HL7?
Well, so HL7 is not a programming language. HL7 is a protocol called Health. It's called Health Level 7, and all that is it's a set of protocols for structuring data, is what it is. But it's not the actual programming language itself. And I'm trying to remember what that is. Epic is built on some weird one that again you would never learn in school. But it's still a programming language, right? Just like anything, you learn the basics of any programming language, and the same sorts of structures exist across other ones as well. And they would teach you about it, but you really don't have to know the code in most cases, at least not initially. The idea is to how can we configure the system, and how can we use the different configuration options that are built into it to modify the system to fit the needs of our users, specifically doctors in particular, but also other clinicians. Will come to you and say, the system doesn't do this. I want it to show me this information, and I can't get it to show me that information, or I want to transfer that information. So another thing with this health information exchange, the way you handle health information exchange is you've got Epic that Renown has, and they want to talk to the GE Centricity EMR that's out at the hospital in Elko. How do you make that happen? Well, you need to have a bridge. You have to have an interface. And so you may be involved in that process. You may not actually create the interface. There may be a secondary vendor who creates the interface, but your responsibility is to help them understand what that interface needs to look like, what information is actually going to have to be shared, how it should be mapped. And so you're working with data. You may certainly do SQL queries. Some of them will run SQL queries specifically for doctors and other people who need data out of the system. But that's the nature of that particular job. So an interesting opportunity. You're in a healthcare environment. You do have to work with some, it's a little bit different. Healthcare is an interesting animal. In a business, you have a definite hierarchy where you've got employees, managers, VPs, CEOs. In healthcare, you have some of that, but the doctors are unique. Physicians are these unique entities within healthcare that have an enormous amount of power, and they kind of are separate from the traditional hierarchy. And so working with them can be an interesting challenge, certainly, but there's a lot of interesting opportunities as well to work with some unique data and get to know the healthcare environment, which has all sorts of unique characteristics to it. That's just different from traditional business, which makes studying it kind of fascinating because of those differences in power, differences in structures, and differences in the way that they manage data. And at this, in traditional businesses, customers are certainly important, but in healthcare, the patient is uniquely important because if you screw something up for a customer in business, they get ticked off and they switch. You screw something up over here and you actually kill that patient, and that's a little bit worse than business. So it makes for some, that's part of the reason doctors are the way they are. They feel a higher sense of responsibility. A manager at IGT, if something gets goofed up, somebody's slot machine doesn't work right, and doctor screws something up and a patient dies. It's just a little bit different level, and so they function and think a little bit different. But an interesting opportunity. There we go. Thank you. Yes.
You looked it up too, didn't you?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, exactly.
That's probably why they call it that.
Outfitting.
Would it help you guys if we posted intern opportunities? Data Edbrick sends me all of the intern opportunities in my email all the time. So
Good idea to put them on the website.
yeah, I'll do that for you guys.
Yeah.
If you take her class,
You
she'll
can
tell
sign up
you
for that as well.
if you want, she'll put you on that email list.
Yep. So I would strongly recommend once you take 475 to ask her to put you on that email list. She sends out probably 2 or 3 a month.
It's actually how I got my job at Reno Orthopedic. I got an email from her and I was like, oh,
And not,
Also, if you're interested in internships, try the job fair this month. I think it's like on the 26th or sometime that week. We'll be promoting a lot, but a lot of those employers are looking for interns.
some of those aren't even internships. Like some of the stuff Dana sends out is actual jobs.
yeah, mine's an actual job.
I mean, internships are jobs, but I mean like not temporary. They pay you, which is nice.
That is an interesting thing. So like IGT, for example, when you take an internship there and then you switch over to a regular job, the bump up in pay is not very much. It's pretty much because you're doing the same thing. I mean, you're doing the actual work. Certain internships, internships can vary. Some internships can be very much you're there and you're kind of learning and they're not expecting much out of you. And other ones, you're really doing the work and you're doing exactly what you would be doing as a full employee. And so when you switch over, the only difference is now you're getting benefits and you're there on a full-time basis instead of just for 6 months or however long an internship is. And so you might want to look at that too. But most of the main ones, IGT, Microsoft, are like that. They're having you do the actual job rather than just sort of follow along and learn and actually put you into it. But it creates some unique, there's pressure involved in that as well to do a good job and be productive. And so it's challenging, certainly. You want to make sure that you have enough time to devote to that to do a good job. They're not expecting you to work 40 hours while you're there for your 20 hours or